Nathaniel Bar Jonah of Great Falls was convicted in 2002 on charges of kidnapping and sexual assault of a 15 and 12-year-old boy. Bar Jonah died in the Montana State Prison in 2008 while serving a 130-year sentence. He was also the chief suspect of the Great Falls police investigation into the 1996 disappearance of 10-year-old Zachary Ramsey. In her book, Eyes of a Pedophile, Detecting Child Predators, former Great Falls doctor Betty Kuffel studies Bar Jonah from childhood through adulthood and identifies behaviors to help recognize child predators. In tonight's feature interview, Kuffel tells Flathead reporter Katrin Fry one of her goals in telling this story is to empower victims to report their attackers.
I think the first thing that drew me to this situation and writing about pedophiles is my years of experience working in the emergency room and having to take care of a number of children that were harmed by pedophiles. The other thing is I have 3 family members that were victimized by pedophiles, so it's very close to me because I've seen the harm that it has done for them and for others. And the other thing that I found is when I tried to research this, it was very difficult to find information on pedophile behavior. And as a result, I spent a long time researching, finding many references that were case reviews by FBI profilers. And I think the very best reference I found was actually from the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. They have the best information that's available to the public.
Were you in Great Falls at the time that this was going on?
I was actually working in the emergency room at the time of his arrest, and that's one of the reasons that I became so interested in the case. Another reason is because I knew the detectives, and because of other people being brought into the emergency room, and with the detectives investigating, I was able to meet them, and they were actually very helpful in my process of researching this case.
When did you decide that you wanted to really research this case and write about it? You've talked about some of your personal reasons for being interested, but to sit down and write about that, all the things that you learned, what prompted that?
His arrest and the fact that he lived across the street from the emergency room, I became more interested. Plus, I have been an avid true crime reader for 20 years, and I particularly like Anne Rule, and because of my interest in true crime, I thought this would be a case also that not only people would be interested in, but that it would help people. It would actually help people if I could write something that would provide a reference for caregivers and parents to help them keep their children safer.
During the course of your research, you actually got to go visit Bar Jonah in prison and sit down and interview him. Can you talk to me about that, about what he was like and about how you felt going into that interview?
Sure. I found him to be extremely personable, and it was actually chilling after I went there and talked to him. I was with him for an hour and a half, and I found him to be a gentleman. He was easy to talk to, and the chilling part was I could see how he was able to convince women to leave their children with him.
He had been a trustworthy, respected member of the community?
Well, in some ways. He was a church-going member. He attended a number of potlucks. He shared food with the people in the church he attended in Great Falls, and he was actually a youth leader in the church. So many, many people knew him, and they did trust him. And I think this is one of the issues that you will see with pedophiles is they tend to be extremely believable people, and they are often in positions of power, which also puts them in proximity to children.
You had mentioned, with your book and with talking with different people involved in the case, including Bar Jonah himself, you kind of put together information for parents. It's one of your goals with this book, is for parents and caregivers to be able to look for signs. Can you tell me a little bit about what some of those things are?
Sure. I have on my website a list of pedophile characteristics and also recommendations that help parents protect the children. And I'll go over a few of those right now, but for any of the listeners who would be interested, they are available on my website, which is bettykuffel.com, and they can be downloaded and printed and distributed however you would like. But I think one of the basic findings that we see with pedophiles are they are believable people. They most of them are people you know and trust, and although some operate as strangers, where they will abduct children right off the street, those, meaning stranger abductions is what the term is that is used, but the other is that they tend to groom parents and children, and grooming behavior basically means that you learn to trust them. They ingratiate themselves to you. They're kind. They give your children gifts, take them places, and offer to babysit or bring you food. Those are really the most important ones.
Some of those things, they don't sound very intimidating, though. I mean, how would I know a good person from a bad person?
Well, that's the very difficult part of this, because many of these people many of these behaviors are perfectly normal and believable and appropriate. So what parents need to do is be vigilant and watch and see if more than one or two of these characteristics are seen in an individual. And then the follow-up would be that if you see characteristics that worry you or that trouble you, is that you do not leave your children in their care, and watch. Just be vigilant. Don't let them do overnights or be alone with this particular individual.
Because I think one of the things is trying to, for people, for anybody out in the community, any parent, is trying to find that balance between, trusting and safety, and how to know when somebody is looking to victimize your child.
Right, and I think that it's difficult in many situations. However, if you find someone who seems to be more interested in your child than they are in you, that would be a clue. If you find someone is providing gifts to your child, unusual, more than you would expect, not just on a birthday or something like that. Another thing would be if they want to take pictures of your child. Many pedophiles collect pictures. Some of them are just photos and not nude photos or anything suggestive. But I think that's another real red flag.
What about talking with your children?
Extremely important. And if you can try to get your children to talk to you about everything and encourage them not to have secrets. One of the characteristics that pedophiles often show is that once they've molested a child, they will intimidate the child into silence. And you might find that a child refuses, for example, to go with an uncle, or doesn't want to be with their grandfather, or refuses to go on an outing that they normally would like to attend. Those, again, are areas that you need to really watch.
Talking about your book and the way it's laid out, this clearly focuses on the Barjona case that happened here in Montana. But how else does it work? It sounds like you talk about some of the different warning signs, different things to look for. Can you talk to me a little bit about just how your book flows?
Sure. Nathaniel Barjona is a textbook case of pedophile behavior, and I used his life of crime against children as a guide to point out pedophile behavior to help people learn from his behavior.
So he's the example.
Exactly. He's a good example. He was raised in a Christian family. He had problems in early life. He was violent even at the age of 6. He molested the first child when he was 10 years old and the child was 5. So his behavior started early and progressed. And many of the children that he molested back in his youth did not come forward until he was arrested in Great Falls. In my research for the book, I was able to go back and talk with his victims. And they were very willing to talk to me because they felt it was so important to help others, to avoid having other children go through what they did.
Who is the intended audience for your book?
The intended audience is anyone who has children or grandchildren, their teachers, anyone who is around children that can that feel responsible for them. I think it's also good for even teenagers to read a book like this because it will help them be more aware of behaviors as they grow older. And I think it also would help teachers and even law enforcement. People who don't really understand the criminal mind and the psychopathology of pedophile behavior, I think it would be valuable.
Your background isn't so much head doctor, but still this is kind of head doctor realm. Can you talk to me about that switch from practicing internal medicine to sitting down, talking, doing the interviews, conducting this research, and putting together this product?
Sure. I have always been interested in the mind, and there was a time that I was actually interested in psychiatry. I nearly went into a combined residency for internal medicine and psychiatry, but ended up in internal medicine, but I've always carried that interest in psychology. And then brain function. I've just always studied more neurology than anything. It's kind of my interest area, neuropsychology and what makes people work.
Well, Dr. Kuffel, thank you so much for speaking with me. I have been speaking with Dr. Betty Kuffel, who is the author of Eyes of Pedophile, Detecting Child Predators. Thanks again for taking the time this morning.
Thank you.